Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Friday Night Chill with Will. This is episode 9. So hope you guys are doing well this week. This week, we're going to be talking about Twitter. I feel like a lot of weird stuff has been happening with that website. And, yeah, man, I just kind of want to talk about like the whole thing because I've been using it probably the longest out of all the social media stuff that I have left. Because other than maybe my first Facebook account, like, because I made Facebook pretty early on, but Twitter I can remember having like right away, back when it came out, and I think like 2008 or something like that. And so, yeah, man, let's dive into it. Cause it came out in like 2008, so I would have been like a freshman. I would have been a freshman in high school. So I was like 14 or 15 at the time. So, pretty young. And Twitter was a very different place. At first, I didn't really get it. Because it seemed, I don't know, it seemed really silly to me because it was just like, it was during a time where like social media stuff was like, I guess, very literal. So like, status updates were like big during this time with like MySpace and Facebook, stuff like that, and just kind of like very literal updates on what you were doing. And I think Twitter was like that to an extreme. And arguably some people still use Twitter like this, where it's literally just a live feed of their brain, of every freaking thought that comes to their mind. And so I used it kind of like that, like kind of spottily for a while. Because access to these sites was very different back then. So I still had a flip phone when Twitter came out, which sounds weird, but it's true. And a way I would use it is through the mobile site, which were pretty popular. Mostly if you had like an unlimited data plan, which I got like a little later on, so I was able to like do stuff like that. And then they also had a text, like a number you could text, so you could like you could literally like text Twitter your tweets and it would like post it for you. They got rid of that feature like actually very recently. I want to say within like the past 2 years they finally got rid of that, but that was a feature for like years, and that's how I would tweet a lot of my stuff. Like I had a contact in my phone saved as Twitter, and so whenever I would like think of a tweet, I would just text it. It was honestly that was like pretty innovative at the time, because that was like, apps weren't really taken off yet. The iPhone had just like come out, so apps were not what they are today. So it was just a very different time, and it's weird thinking that website is that old. But, it's fun. And throughout the years, just because of your ramblings or whatever, or the people you choose to follow, and just because of the way the site worked, it did a really good job of like getting people in your internet space, for lack of a better word, that were very much into the same things that you were. And that, I think that was fairly true early on, because I think that's how a lot of people in the Ranger fandom, Sentai and Rider, Tokusatsu fandom, that's like how a lot of us found each other, was through places like Twitter. Now you had like older things, You had like message boards and stuff like that, and things like Ranger Board for Power Ranger fans. Um, back in the day, because there were definitely ways of meeting friends online before 2008, but I think this was kind of like Twitter kind of was the catalyst to really start online relationships with people you straight up didn't know immediately. And so it was cool. It was a cool little place, throughout the years. I feel like I've used it in just about every capacity, in every kind of extreme. I've used it very stupidly. I've used it more intelligently, probably more so nowadays. Um, I've deleted my account for a bit, because the whole app was fucking with me, because part of the thing that has been weird is seeing this particular app just become more and more a part of society, I guess, and just like how things work and how, I don't know, because like I feel like there are so many people on Twitter, but there are way more real people in the real world. And so those numbers aren't indicative of each other or don't line up with one another. But yet we still see like so much like cause and effect in the real world because of what happens on Twitter. And I think that's interesting, because there could be like such a big thing that like happens on Twitter or something, and depending on what it is, I think it can vary depending on what it is, but depending on what it is, you'll try and talk to someone else about it in the real world who doesn't have Twitter, and they're just like, I don't know what that is, I don't know who that person is, I don't know what you're talking about, what is going on, and I think that's really interesting, that something that is so big, because it is like a worldwide, it's big worldwide, it's not like just America and Canada, it's literally all over the world. It's just crazy that something that's so interconnected and seemingly big can kind of not be as powerful as it seems. It's just interesting. It's been interesting seeing that growth for the app, where it like has become powerful in certain ways, but not in a lot of other ways that people think it would. And so, the app's been good. We've been having an okay time. Things have gotten kind of negative, but it could just be people being jaded or getting older or whatever, or the way we use social media changing, all that stuff. But within the past year, for sure, it has changed quite a bit, and mostly not for the better, because I'm sure everyone listening to this is aware Elon Musk decided to buy that. And I have never seen anyone more clueless own something they know nothing about. And it's actually insane. Literally the only reason this man owns this website is because he had the money. Or that's debatable if he even had the money, because he's like losing money right now. But it's so crazy to like just to see the kind of downward spiral it's been. And it's also weird because a lot of us, I think, have like wanted to get off the ride, but it's also one of those things where it's like it's such a unique situation where this stupidly wealthy man has this thing that he doesn't know how it works, but he wants to make it this thing that everyone on the platform doesn't want it to be. And it's just it's crazy. It's crazy because there's so much pushback on literally every decision he makes, because every decision he makes for the website is actually stupid. At the time of this, recording or stream, the he's calling the site X, right? The branding has all shifted. It's not Twitter anymore. Everything is this X thing that he wants, which I guess is a trend. He has tried doing something similar with some of his other companies. He's tried doing this with Tesla, and I think there's one more company that he owns. It's skipping my mind right now. But from what other people that work in those companies have said, this is not something uncommon for him to try and do. It's just those companies have put procedures in place so that Elon can't fuck with anything, basically, because they know he's stupid and he doesn't know what he's doing. So they've kind of had to put like safety measures in so they can make sure he can't totally tank their company. When it came to Twitter, the people in charge didn't really care. They were just kind of like, I feel like they just did it to make this guy feel like he won, because I think it's Jack Dorsey and some other guy. I can't remember if it's two people or just Jack, but they were the founders of Twitter and the original developers. And so after they lost the site, they just went and started, Blue Sky, which I guess is doing okay. It's essentially the same type of platform from my understanding. It's just not as widely available at the moment because it's still like in development and all that. So I think the app is still invite only, which it is whatever. There's that's a whole different part of this whole thing, is like the whole Twitter clone thing, because like I was saying earlier, like we've kind of wanted to just, like, we know the site sucks now, but it's like we want to see it like to the end, just because I think people are curious and they just really want to know exactly how bad can it actually get. And it's gotten pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. He's since buying the site, he's created Twitter Blue. And by the way, I'm not gonna call it X. No one is calling it X because no one respects this man. Also, this man dead names his own child, so we're gonna dead name his stupid website. Okay, we're calling it Twitter. He has just made every dumb choice possible, which is crazy. He's totally fucked up the way verification works for online profiles on the internet by trying to monetize that. That was so stupid, and now Meta has started doing it with their verification process, and it's just really created like a big negative space on the internet where like anyone can pretend to be any kind of fucking person now, and there's like no repercussions for it because they decided to pay $8.99 a month for a stupid check mark and a handful of features for when the site decides to work. So you have like the whole verification thing. You have him limiting features, which I guess he's doing to like try and entice people to subscribe to Twitter Blue. But I mean, if your site doesn't work for free, why am I going to pay for the chance that it might work better? That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So, yeah, that's been a whole thing as well. And kind of like the biggest thing for me, I think, has just been his whole thing with rebranding it as X. Totally eliminating any of the branding that Twitter had. Like, Twitter became so ingrained in culture that it changed the way people talked. It changed the way people describe things. And he decided that instead of like owning that and being like, okay, I'm the one who owns this like signature thing, he made it the most generic fucking thing on the internet. He called the site X. Tweets are now called posts on the site. When you retweet something, it's called reposting. And that's fucking insane, because tweet got added to the dictionary as, you know, that action of going online and posting something on Twitter. Like, that got added to the dictionary because it became so ingrained in culture that it had to get its own, you know, definition. And he just went in to probably one of the most iconic, you know, social media platforms of the modern era, and he just decided to get rid of all of that. And it's just like, why would you do that? You know? Like, just thinking about that. Like, just even, like, trying to conceive how someone thinks that's a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it boggles my mind. I don't get what goes through this dude's head. He just gets an idea in his head and then tells his developers to do it, because Lord knows he can't do any of this fucking shit himself. And so he tells his developers, and no one at the fucking company has enough of a backbone to just be like, no, your idea is fucking dumb. And they just do whatever he asks. And so now the site is basically a product of a man having a midlife crisis and, you know, just trying to make this thing that no one wants to use, which is crazy. You know, so many advertisers have pulled out of it. Big companies, Apple has pulled out. You know, their marketing campaigns like slowly dwindled away, I think, as campaigns ended or whatever and contracts expired. You know, no one renewed anything, because why would they? You know, this site is just kind of like a hellscape, and now it's become like a big right-wing pipeline for a lot of people. Like, there's just so much bullshit you can see if you look at the promoted tweets on the platform now. It's just like all these like QAnon idiots just going on about, you know, nonsense. And it's a shame. It's a damn shame, because you know, Twitter was like the easiest way to get thoughts out there immediately, to have a conversation with a community immediately. You know, I feel like on Instagram and Facebook and, you know, all the meta companies and just other places, it just isn't as, it's more algorithmic than Twitter. Twitter always felt a little bit more organic. You know, it wasn't until like, I think a year ago, or I can't remember if they added it before Elon took over, but you know, the For You tab on Twitter, that wasn't really a thing. Your timeline was just a live feed of just people tweeting out, and that is, in this day and age, that was such a rarity to find that, because Meta's platforms are all about doing algorithmically charged timelines. You know, they hardly ever fucking show you anything that is posted in a timely manner. You're always finding a fucking post from like 2 or 3 days ago, um, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it just kind of like makes it hard to grow. Whereas like on Twitter, it was just, you know, it's a live feed, dude. You know, like if you go onto the trending tab for like hashtags and stuff like that, you know, you're able to find different people's thoughts on stuff immediately. And that's like another thing too. Like they've stifled the use of hashtags, which that became ingrained in culture as well. Like with that, you know, that totally changed the symbolism of the pound sign. You know, for a millennial like me, that's kind of weird because I grew up with that thing as a pound sign, and then as I got older, like less and less people started calling it that, and more kids are just going like, "Oh yeah, that's a hashtag," and it's like, yeah, it is, you know, and it's just like it's weird, and like all these things that like kind of made Twitter work and like easy to network with people have just been like stifled and just kind of like taken away from the app. But even though all of that is happening, it's still the best version of itself that's out there right now. Because while all this has been happening, you know, we've had our fair share of Twitter clones come out from all of this, right? So I would say probably the most popular ones are Blue Sky, which I said earlier was Jack Dorsey's, you know, project, because he was, you know, the original developer for Twitter. You have Mastodon, which I'm not too familiar with because it doesn't seem as much of a direct clone as Blue Sky. Mastodon seems more like kind of like hubs, in kind of a way that Discord works, I think. And I'm not too familiar with how Discord works. I have a very basic level understanding of it. But yeah, that one seems a little bit more slightly more complicated to work. And then one that I downloaded was Hive, which me personally, I think that's the one that's the most promising of all of the Twitter clones that are out there right now. It's still in development, and I would say there's still like I'd still say there's people on there that are working towards making the platform something. That one has the most promise out of all of these because the last one, at least the last one I'm going to mention for today, because I think there's a few more that I haven't mentioned. Last one I'm going to mention today is Threads, which is Meta's attempt at Twitter. And let's talk about Threads, okay? Now, this whole thing exists because Mark Zuckerberg got in a little tiff with Elon because they just stay, you know, these rich people just stay talking shit about each other on the internet because they have nothing better to do, because they don't do anything at their normal jobs other than tell people what to do, you know? And so, just for the sake of being petty, really, you know, Mark Zuckerberg decides to make a Twitter clone just to prove to Elon that he can do it. And so he does. And when they launched it, I would say it's been a month now. When they launched it last month, it seemed pretty cool. A really, really positive thing about it that I thought was really cool was that when you created your account, it allowed you to basically copy your follows from Instagram over to Threads. So if someone on your Instagram made a Threads account, it would automatically follow that person, and you wouldn't have to go through and try and find all your mutuals on Threads, which is a fantastic feature because that's kind of the biggest hurdle people have to overcome when they want to pack up and move to a different social media platform, is because they do not want to start all the way from the ground up again. That's kind of like the biggest problem that's been with all the other ones like Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Hive, is those things you have to completely start anew. You're starting fresh, and that's really tedious and really annoying to have to deal with. And the fact that Meta just came in and was just like, yeah, our Twitter clone, you can just copy and follow all of the people you already follow on Instagram, which you probably don't want to follow everyone on Instagram on Threads, but at least you can like see it, and if you decide you don't, you can just click on follow really quick. It's really easy, and it really streamlined that kind of transition. Now, the problem I have with Threads, and this is just me as a singular user, my problem with Threads is that there's nothing to do other than post on it. Like, that is literally all you can do on this app. So when you open it, it is just a timeline, which is not a live feed by any means. This is a Meta-owned app. So this is going to be an algorithm for your timeline. So even though you're following like all these people, you're still going to be seeing posts from 36 minutes ago right next to a post from 15 hours ago, even though that makes absolutely no fucking sense, especially with this format of posting. And then in the next tab over, you have a search area, so that way you can search up users and stuff. And usually that pre-populates with people you follow on Instagram already. If it hasn't like already automatically, followed them for you, you can just kind of like see them all. And then you have the post button, which the way it uses posts is kind of nice. It is more than the 280 character limit that baseline Twitter has. I think it's a 4,000 character limit. I don't know. That seems like way too fucking long. Personally, I think 280 characters is plenty. I do enough threads with 280 characters as it is, So you do that. They have that going for them. And then you can also attach up to 10 pictures on a post, which is cool. That's cool. 4 pictures is kind of, sometimes that can screw with like how people want to post some stuff. So, 10 pictures, that's nice. That's a nice even number. That's great. And then in the tab next to that is going to be the activities tab. And that has like, it shows you who's been following you, who's been replying to your stuff, who has been reposting and liking your posts and all that fun stuff. So it's basically your notifications tab, right? And then in the post, in the tab next to that is your profile. And that's it. It's just those 5 tabs, and that's it. Now, my biggest issue is, why is there no way to explore topics on the app? Like, because in that search column, you should have something for like a topic, for like a TV show, for a movie, for something, but there's nothing. All it is a search bar for users on the website. So you can find people to follow. And that's its biggest problem right there for me. Because there's no way you can discover new people on it. All you can do is transfer your friends that you knew already from Instagram over to this app where they maybe might use it, and that's it. Everyone just posts on there, and you're just kind of like stuck in your bubble unless the algorithm decides to spit, someone you don't follow's post at you, which is pretty frequent because it's a Meta app. So of course they're going to do that. They're not going to show you the people you've added to your page. They're going to show you a bunch of shit that you don't follow, because that's just how that company works. And that's like its biggest flaw. The second is a lack of direct messaging. Because, that's something all their other apps have. They had it, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of these features are all things that all of their other apps have had, and they have it. It's not like it's a small company making this. It's Meta, literally one of the biggest social media companies in the world, and they're making a site that doesn't have direct messaging or like a trending column, which is insane for the landscape of social media now. Like, to me, that is absolutely crazy, and actually it's like embarrassing for them, because they're treating Threads as kind of, at least to me, it seems like they're treating Threads as more of an extension to Instagram, because you can just like sign up with your Instagram account, and they're not making a fully fledged social media platform. It was just something that was kind of thrown together at the last minute just to kind of prove a point. And the point ended up being moot, because while a lot of people did sign up for Threads, just a couple days ago, Mark Zuckerberg reported that Threads has lost over 50%, half of its users that signed up on day one. And it's not surprising, because there's nothing to fucking do on this app besides tweet or post. Because not everyone on these sites, not everyone on Twitter posts. A lot of people just repost other people's shit. That's how these apps work. Like, I think I read like a user like summary type of thing, and I think it said that 10% of active Twitter users make up for 90% of the content you see on the platform. And that was from like probably a year or two ago. And to me, that makes so much sense, because I will go on people's profiles on Twitter and it is just nothing but retweets and reposts from other people. Like, they don't have a single thought to share about anything. It's just, let me just retweet a bunch of shit. And that's how some people choose to use social media, and that's perfectly fine. But it's just, it's so crazy that these people who are in charge of these big things, and it's especially embarrassing for someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who like totally changed the way we use social media, to just kind of go into a project like this so ignorantly. And it really it makes absolutely no sense. Colin, you did bring up a good point. Hopefully, okay, it's going to cut it off. I need to move my name tag up here so it doesn't cut off comments. But yes, Threads does not allow spicy content. It is very much a meta platform, meaning all the content on it is probably PG-13 max. If they see anything resembling a penis or a vagina or a woman's breast, that is going to get flagged and removed and all that fun stuff. And that's like a big factor that they're missing from like all of these other platforms, because Toto's mentioning it too. Everyone wants to be Tumblr these days. It's true. Like, people keep forgetting that Tumblr really shot itself in the foot and like faded off into obscurity when it got rid of not safe for work content and explicit content, because that was a huge user base. And Twitter is the same type of thing. But all of these companies don't want to admit that that these platforms are being used for like sex stuff. And when they alienate a large user base like that, I mean, it's not surprising that they're not as successful as they could be. And the thing I don't understand is, how can a company like Meta, right, develop technology that can recognize whenever a human face or a dog face or a cat face is on a camera, right, in real time? It can track your face in real time. But for some reason, it cannot detect a person's like, genitals or breasts or whatever recognize that and immediately flag it as not safe for work content and filter it into a different area of the app where it's appropriate to have that and create a different section for that. That's what I don't understand. Because so many of these people want to avoid not safe for work content. They don't want to spend the time actually developing ways to just incorporate it more safely into it. Because I understand the apprehension some people have, because there are kids on these apps, which is true. You know, the age limit for Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media platforms is 13 years old. So there are minors on the platform. And I understand the need to, you know, create space on the app for that particular level of content. You know, there's different places. And it just seems like a no-brainer to me that rather than just kind of like trying to delete all of these profiles and ostracizing this giant user base that you could have, it just seems like to me it would make more sense is to create a separate space on the app where all of that content can exist safely for consenting adults who want to look at that content. You know what I mean? It's just like, it seems so simple to me. And I'm just like a person who uses social media. So I can't imagine what it must be like to be a developer working for one of these companies, just being like, all right, cool. Let me just, you know, do all this shit because Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk told me to, you know? I don't know, man. It just seems like that could totally change the game with how it can change the game with, you know, what kids are exposed to on social media, which is good, because sometimes I feel like because even when I was a kid, it was kind of like the Wild West, and I think even more so now, really depending on what platform you're on. But it's really like the Wild West when it comes to like the type of content that you're gonna find on the internet. And it is kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's like nice having access to so much information, but at the same time it's like it can kind of cause people to be jaded for something they weren't mentally prepared for. So I don't know. I don't think any of these companies have approached it in a reasonably meaningful way, and that's probably mostly because you can't monetize, you know, stuff like that, and that's what these companies care about now, especially Twitter. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, man, this app is crazy. You know, I was reading, because I blocked Elon Musk on Twitter, because even though I have him blocked, I can still see plenty of screen caps of, you know, what the frick he's doing every day. And, you know, just kind of seeing, like, the different ideas he has for the platform. He kind of wants to turn it into, like, what WeChat is in, I think, Asia, which has become, like, kind of like an online hub for, like, everything. He wants to turn it into, like, a shop and a banking system and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, you can't even get DMs to work properly, and you want people to like trust you with their banking information? I don't know, man. I know people are going to be stupid enough to do it, because people have been stupid enough to buy Twitter Blue. But it's such a shame, because this platform in particular, Twitter, you know, it could lean really negative, depending, and you could really find yourself into like some really scary rabbit holes if you weren't careful, and if you didn't have like the right mindset when going on to Twitter. But I think if you do approach the site correctly and try not to hold too much meaning to any of the stuff on it, I think it's it was a fantastic networking tool. It's how I've met so many of my friends that I have now. And, it's such a shame. Um, Part of a theory I have had recently, and I don't know specifics on how certain legal things work with copyright, but this is just kind of like a hypothesis I have. I don't think Twitter is going to backtrack on the rebranding or anything like that. I think Elon got what he wanted, and that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be this X thing. We're still gonna call it Twitter. But what I think is gonna happen is when Blue Sky eventually opens up, I think they are going to end up rebranding Blue Sky to Twitter. And the reason I think that is because you can't sit on copyright forever. Like when you own the copyright to something, you can't just sit on it. So eventually, whether Elon wants to or not, he would have to do something with Twitter, or at least the verbiage, to maintain ownership of it. Because now it's just, it's not Twitter legally. And so my thinking is whenever that expires, whenever that comes up, Blue Sky, like Jack Dorsey and whoever the fuck runs that shit, are just going to swoop in. They're going to take the Twitter name and the branding and all of that stuff, and they're just going to rebrand Blue Sky. And Blue Sky will essentially become a brand new Twitter under the old management, basically. That's kind of my long-running hypothesis to, how all of this will play out. Yeah, so Toto, all their stuff is formerly Twitter, because no one fucking is gonna call it X. But that's kind of my hypothesis on how the long game of all this is gonna play out. I think we're gonna go in this whole roundabout thing, only to end up with the original owners of Twitter having another platform again called Twitter, and the only thing we'll get out of this is Elon. We got to see a rich guy run a social media company, arguably one of the best ones we've ever had, and run it straight into the ground. So, yeah, man, that ought to be interesting. It sucks, but I've been on the site for so long, you just gotta stick with it till the end and just kind of see how it all plays out. So we'll see what happens with that. So anyway, I think we'll cap it there, though, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little tangent I had, just kind of talking about social media. I've used this stuff for so long, and it's become such a big part of my life. I think all of our lives. It's just kind of nice to have a little discussion about, how it's affected stuff, and how it has changed since it initially started. So I don't think I have any real announcements. You know what? I got one. So if you guys remember, a few weeks ago, I was wearing something from Al, from the Al Combo on Twitter. It was a Beetleborgs jersey. He launched a year anniversary sale today for a bunch. He's selling a bunch of shit. He's remade some of his older pieces that were originally discontinued, and selling some leftovers from the Beetleborgs stuff that he made a few weeks ago. So if you guys want any of that, go to the alcombo.com. Yep, the alcombo.com, and pick up some of that stuff. And yeah, man, that'd be cool. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other places you find podcasts, consider leaving a review. I would appreciate that. That would be fantastic. It does help out the show when you do stuff like that. Get out to different people, and I would really appreciate that. So yeah, man. So I'm not gonna leave the stream running like I did last week. I accidentally did not hit end broadcast on OBS, so I left the stream running for a couple hours. But we're not gonna do that tonight. I'm just reminding myself to actually do things right. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, you guys. And I'll see you next week for another Friday night show.